And recently, I've been getting into talking to people who place things on the GM's Guild. Um, they've been a real hoot. Like their creative spirit and talking to them kind of gets me amped up every time. It's super awesome.
My name is Brock, and this is the Dungeon Master's Toolkit podcast. On today's episode, I talked to Adrian Lawrence from the Dungeons and Degrees podcast. We talk about how he found his initial group of players online. He also has some non-conventional DM prep that he talks about. We also discuss dealing with player combos and making sure that different pieces of the game don't get broken. And along those lines, homebrewing items and abilities and monsters. And then we also talk a little bit about an experience he had where he had to remove a player from the game. And finally, at the end, we talk about his podcast, Dungeons and Degrees. We do have an ongoing design competition right now to design a location for a fantasy desert metropolis. So if you want more details on that, make sure you head over to the Discord server and you can get all of the details. We have 1 week, so the 23rd, we will be accepting submissions until then, at which point I will read through all the submissions and then decide a winner. The reward is a $10 gift card to either Amazon or DriveThruRPG. That's the winner's choice. So again, if you're interested or if you haven't done your submission yet, you still have 1 more week to do that. So head over to the Discord and get those in. There's also a submission form with all of the information in the description of this video. So check that out as well. And finally, before we get started, if you are interested in supporting the podcast, first thing you can do is like, share, comment, and just engage with the episodes so that more people can find it. If you want to get in on the discussion and maybe be on the podcast, join our Discord server. That's the easiest way to get in and talk to other people, potentially find and play in some games, and get in on an interview. And then finally, if you want to support us financially, check out the affiliate links in each of the descriptions of the shows for any of the products that we talked about on the show. So if you're feeling like you want to get yourself a new RPG book, head over, use those affiliate links, and you'll be good to go. And without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Today I have Adrian Lawrence with me from the Dungeons and Degrees podcast. Welcome, Adrian.
Hi, Brock. Nice to be here.
Glad to have you. To get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about a little bit about yourself and how you got started in tabletop role-playing games?
Okay, yeah. A little bit myself. I'm a let's see, dungeon master since I guess real serious since my freshman year in college. So that's been years ago, but I got introduced way earlier than that. My father got us into D&D, but it ended up killing us and our characters, and I just was getting frustrated. Essentially, the dice wasn't going in my favor, and I just never touched it until college. DM'd off and on, a bunch of players all around Texas because I kept moving, so I never had a consistent party. And finally, when quarantines happened, I started playing Roll20, and I have a 1.5 year long session, which is super cool. I didn't think we'd get here, but here we are.
And was that campaign with just random people that you met online, or were they friends from previous games?
Oh, they're all online. I didn't trust myself to like do well and over the internet at first because I was afraid that my, I guess, cadence and motions and everything like that wouldn't travel well. So I was nervous and I didn't want to mess up with my friends. So I was like, okay, I'll mess up with these strangers. But just kept playing after a while. Yeah, and I started them off with Curse of Strahd. They're from all over the United States. It's crazy, like each corner.
So is balancing time zones a little bit tricky?
Well, I mean, it went into the searching part. I gave them an original questionnaire, and then after they filled it out, I put it all in this like Word sheet, and then I did a secondary questionnaire, just like filling in spots, finding locations, or not locations, but like time zones, and when do you think we could start? So when everybody got together and finally decided, like, you know, these time zones would work out for me, I invited those people who said, yes, this time in this time zone would work for me. So I essentially got like, I put 60 people into the Google Sheets, but had like 120 applicants. And so it just took a while, but I found some people, and, those who weren't as, responsive to my second round of Google Sheet like questionnaires were the people that were like, this is too much work. Like, I want people who are going to put in the work. I don't, that thought only came after I did it. I was just like really nervous. That's why I had all these questions.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, you did kind of weed out the best possible group for your situation then.
Oh yeah, very lucky to have them. I mean, they've stuck around. We have people come and go. What's called early in the campaign, where like this isn't for me, or this is DM's, I guess style isn't for me at the pace that we're going, and that's fine because there's if I'm not your, style, there's definitely someone out there that can fit your needs. So I'm glad the people that have stuck around have just said, they like what's going on.
So, what is, speaking of style, what is your DM style?
I would say very laxed on the rules, mainly for the fact that I don't know all the rules, and I think that's okay, unless there's like some nitpicky stuff. I have a rules lawyer in my party, and not like the this is how it's supposed to go. It's like this is how it is. Here's like an tweet from Jerry Crawford and all that stuff, and this is what we could do, or you can do whatever you need to do, DM. I'm like, and I just kind of balance out what's supposed to happen. I mean, there's some disagreements that have come across, and we're like, okay, here's how we're going to play it until we find a better way to kind of facilitate this. Because I don't want to lose the momentum over one thing. Um, but yeah, very laxed, I think, and a lot of on the fly stuff. And I forget a lot of stats, even though I have the sheet in front of me. I just like, oh, by the way, this guy can't get feared, or hey, by the way, this guy got DR. I'm just too busy like hamming it up for them, just like showcasing what's going on, but to read all the words, and I'm like, oh, that shouldn't have been as easy, or oh, that shouldn't have been as hard, things like that. But you know, if they can forgive that, and how I play it, which is kind of very chaotic, I think they're pretty okay with it so far. And I guess that's why they stuck around, that they're okay with like everything I've been doing.
Well, and part of it, just tabletop games in general, is that you're just trying to tell a fun, cool story, usually, right? So that's as long as you're doing that, and like you said, your players are sticking around, then you're doing something right.
Yep, exactly. I'm always afraid that like if I ever like pull from the internet again, would I still get this good of a batch of people, or was I just very lucky? I haven't done it yet. I have a lot of people who would like, or like a lot of people that want me to like play in their games or play with them, and I'm like, I don't have the time, kind of thing. But we'll see what happens after this session or this whole module is over.
And where did you go to find people? Were you on like Reddit or the Roll20? I think they have some searching capabilities as well.
Yeah, the looking for group on Roll20. That's what I used. It was kind of hard at first, kind of managing all that, because I made a Discord server and I made that, and one of the people was like, "Hey, just let us know when we're not gonna have a session or whatever." And I did it on one server, but not the other, because I don't know, just it was just a hassle because I had Discord on my phone, but I didn't have the Roll20 system up or an app or anything like that. I don't know if they have an app. They do. They're working on something. I know that. Anyway, sorry, scatterbrained.
That's all right.
But I just used the Roll20 and just found a lot of different people, a lot of just like random names, and it was interesting. One guy, he fit the aesthetic with his name, um, and I was like, maybe I don't know if this is just like pulling at me because we're playing Chris Estrada and his name is Vampire Blood, but let's see what's going on. So I had some people like that, and other people like have their real names. So it was just a mixed batch of individuals.
Well, as long as they're fun to play with, and um, are you the primary dungeon master then for the group?
Oh yeah. I mean, so it's a mixed batch. Like two or three of them, I think, was this their first like foray into Dungeons and Dragons, and the other three had played before. One of them had even DM'd this game, but it was on hiatus because of quarantine and wanted to keep playing it somehow, some way. And he
Sure.
didn't want to play Curse of Strahd. He wanted to play something else, but he could only find Curse of Strahd games. And I'm lucky to have him around.
I have not
But
played
yeah,
Curse of
I'm the one
Strahd.
who DMs. I'll
I
keep
haven't.
spoilers away then.
Well, yeah, and I've just heard a lot of good things about it, or at least a lot of people seem to enjoy it or seem to be running it. So
hmm
I assume that that's good marks on the module. Um, how
And they've updated some stuff recently too with that new book that came out, which is something I kind of want, but I don't need it because I already have a book. But whatever.
which book did they just release?
It was called, I think it was like Ravenloft Revisited, or something like that, or it's just Curse of Strahd, but it's just they edited some things inside the book that were a bit problematic, um, and they added some cool monsters and some powers and all that stuff. So and they got some like cool foiled back tarot cards from what I heard. Oh,
Oh,
so cool. It's a whole thing. It comes in a little coffin, the whole book
even
and
better.
everything. Exactly. Gotta
um,
sell that memorabilia.
and before we got on the call, you mentioned a little bit about how you uh, prep games and that it may be a little bit non-conventional. Can you talk about that?
Okay. For all my people that are listening, I'm probably gonna tell my group about this. Um, I read the beginning and last part of the module and said, "Hey, I can run this," and I just started the game, and I was like reading chunks as we're playing ahead of time, and that was the majority of it. Like, I didn't finish reading the whole Curse of Strahd module until like I want to say 3 or 4 months ago. So I didn't totally. I wanted to be kind of surprised along with them. That way, things made sense to them and to me. But once I read it, my usual like prep method is just relax because I have such like a high stress job. Um, I end up just like overthinking. So all my prep work has to be either the day before or more. But if it's the day of, I'm not doing anything other than just looking up stat blocks and then just leaving it there and looking at it if I need it.
Sure.
Because from what I've experienced, being over prepared can cause you to, um, hey, sorry, my dog's just messing with something. Um, Being over prepared can cause some like expectations to be fallen. I've been over prepared and I try to like force people down because like this is the only thing I know. This is the only way I know how to play this game because this is how much where I read it. Um, but I've been able to very easily manipulate the story if I have that my mindset to be whatever happens happens, roll with the punches, you'll think of something awesome on the way there. And it usually works out. And for the most part, I would say like 99% of the time, it's worked out famously. Um, I love to improvise. I love to homebrew some stuff every now and then. But in the end, it's just like in the moment, I'm there with them. This is what I remember. And this is how it's going to go down. I don't have any like ceremonies or anything. I just like play some shooter or something in the background, like right 15 minutes before go time. And I'm like, okay, I'm efficiently laxed, and I just go into it. I'm like, hey, you guys ready to play a game?
Hey, that's awesome that you can be really relaxed with it. Does reading the last little bit of the module help you for just knowing, like, okay, this is kind of where we have to get to at some point?
Oh yeah. Here's where we begin. Here's where we end. The middle parts may matter, may not matter. You might get to that spot in the module, you might not. Your characters might want to go somewhere else entirely. And that's what kind of like helped me. It was just like the expectation of where they want to go is up to them. I'm not gonna like, horse and carrot them around Barovia just to get to a certain place. I mean, I did let them know that something was going on behind them, but they're like, we've been in that town like 3 or 4 times. We just need to leave, okay? The sooner we get rid of this big bad evil guy, the sooner that town will be not hectic. So they decided, like, okay, they're holding elections, so we'll see what happens.
And that's actually a really interesting point. One of the first games that I ever played was the Fantasy Flight Star Wars Age of Rebellion game,
Hmm.
and their starter module. I think I definitely had over prepared it because it. I mean, it has room for people to do stuff, but then like you said, it was like the only pieces that I knew were what I read. So then I tried to kind of cram that, and now I agree. I would rather say, okay, here's how you start. Here's maybe kind of how I know things need to end, but I know that the players are going to go in and probably go off the rails. So I'm just gonna open it up so that there's no rails for them to go off.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what's gonna happen if you don't have an expectation of what's supposed to happen if you just ignore it. If you read the beginning and the end, you're like, okay, I have a better idea, and then read all the cool stat blocks at the end. Like I read all the what's called the magic items, the people, the cool monsters. I'm like, I want them to fight this, this, and this. Okay, and eventually they'll get there, or I'll just throw it at them. One of the two. You just have that idea of like, here are the bullet points of what I kind of want them to do, and then we'll see what happens. If one of them they just fly by one, so be it. I didn't prepare. I didn't invest too much time. I'll use that for something else. I'll bring that up later. Any monsters I forgot about, they're in my pocket now. I'm gonna use that later, just in case. Like, oh, this is so easy. Bah, shades.
Um, and since I'm not familiar with the book, is the book itself pretty linear in how it lays out kind of the progression from the beginning to the end?
Sort of. So the progression of the book is, here's a here's the first city. Oh, by the way, if you want to play this module for level to 1 through 3, it's in the back of the book. I'm like, oh, okay, now I've got to get the back of the book. Okay, you finish the module, go back to the front of the book. Oh, okay, go back to the front of the book. Okay, you're done with that. Okay, now here's the places all around you, and there's a big map. Okay, A through Z. Those are the places you can go, and there's different paths, and it jumps around A through Z, and that's how that book is formed. Just here's the little checkpoints that you can go to. Here's the things that are in between. Um, here's the like at the very beginning of that statement, like here's the level they're supposed to be at. Which, in all honesty, my team's kicking ass, so levels don't matter at this point. They're pretty at the end of it. And yeah, I think that for the most part, that's my method, or that's what the book looks like. Um, and the magic items are at the end, and that's like the second thing I read because it gives you lore. It gives you like this guy doesn't like that guy, but they're fighting right now because they hate this guy. Like it gives you the lore and the webbing of the world around you. These set in places like these concrete places like the cities and these cool spots that aren't technically cities but just like forests and stuff. Um, those things will always be there, but the living, breathing aspects, those people, they'll be able to move around and do whatever you as a DM want them to do because the world kind of breathes without your players. As soon as they meet somebody, that person's either gonna be their friend or they're gonna die because they're an enemy. and, and if they don't die, how are they gonna come back from this? How are they gonna be better? They're not gonna like, I almost died last time, but I'm back. How are they better? That kind of idea. I always try to make sure that they're teaming up or leveling up or like, if they survive, they're not going to come back with that same tactic.
Right, yeah, because I mean, they, in most cases, should be fairly smart individuals, right? So,
Hmm. They know the powers. They know what they're up against. How do they become better? I think there's this one spell that has been vexing me called Darkness, and they would go in there, and all my creatures had disadvantage. Now, I could just throw in a random like monster that has magic AoE spell, boom, start messing with that. But I felt like, well, that's just like, oh, I found a need and fill it. Well, how do the people that are going to be there, like module wise, how are they going to be better? What are they going to give up? How are they going to train? What do they know? That kind of stuff. And I give them some homebrew abilities, but I mean, just because one of them or two of them have it doesn't mean like it's gonna. The party has to just think, okay, kill the guys with the glowing red eyes that can see through my darkness, and then we can kill everybody else. Like, there has to be some sort of like tactical, like approach to fighting instead of there's a large mob, let's just wipe them up. Nothing to have to do here, kind of thing.
And that's actually a kind of a neat idea to just, if you have I would say like a problem combo almost by the players, because I'm assuming the darkness is probably coming from like a warlock on your team or on
Yep,
the
yep,
players
yep.
team.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and then just giving. I mean, you don't want to abuse it too much, but giving some NPCs a way to work around it in a way that feasibly makes sense within the setting and the circumstances of encountering the players in the past. I think that's a decent way to get around some of those stronger combos.
yeah, and it's not like they don't have other things they can be doing. Like if I kept throwing the same monsters at them, or not the same monsters, but like the monsters that had the same hindrance as the past monsters, what are they going to learn? They're just going to learn that, oh, this is easy. I'm going to do this, this, and this combo, and we're golden. And then we keep moving on with the story. I'm like, okay, is that really going to be fun for them? Are they going to just keep like, or is this going to be like, okay, we know we can beat this, blah blah blah. How do I make this interesting? Invisible characters that have true sight. Easy. I'm not, but I don't want to like throw it out there without having a reason, or like uh monsters that have or that can like what's that one? Earth tremor or earth
Oh,
sense. They
tremor
can
sense, yeah.
tremor sense. There we go. Like they can see their footsteps and they can like move. Like, but does that make sense in this setting? Like, I want this like the creatures that are here for a reason. There's evil amongst them. There's giant powers out there. What can those powers give these people?
Right.
Oh,
It's not because you're like, oh, the players have figured out how to defeat my minions. Now going forward, all low level minions have true sight or whatever. Right. It's
yeah,
like we're gonna make it specific to maybe certain spellcaster NPCs or monsters or something that
yeah. Head
makes sense.
honchos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I
giving
said
them
this.
ways to communicate that
Mhm,
information with their minions or whatever.
yeah, I think I said this in a TikTok I posted, just saying like I don't want them to go all the way through Curse of Strahd and then get to the guy, and I haven't done anything to stop darkness, and them just kicking Strahd on the ground. They're like, I can't see you, and just pop, pop, pop.
Oh,
But yeah.
that's funny. So, how did you introduce your first set of characters? Because you mentioned like people with red eyes. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Oh, okay. So there was a single witch that survived from this coven, and she ran around what's it called? Ran around, started making alliances with other evil groups. Like, hey, these people are coming in. Like, I don't like you, but these guys can kick your ass. So we need to work together. I think they met up with one of them in the midst of the deal, and the players got to the top where they were making the deal, saw her with these red eyes looking directly at the character that could be usually like, where do I go? Um, and she just locks eyes and grabs this NPC character that he's looking after, and like, well, I see you now, and I see that. And she could tell that his eyes are looking at the girl. He's like, I can see that this is very important to you, but alas, I must leave. And he's pissed because it's not his turn, and he runs up. And he's just casting like Eldritch Blast, and like he already used his spells or something. But oh no no no, what happened? Oh, it was a spell. That's what happened. He this The dirt rose from underneath their feet, consumed all of them in a this big cylinder that just goes straight to the sky and it settles, and then there's nothing there. That's what I did. and they didn't know what happened to her.
That's awesome. This is very,
Yes.
very cinematic for sure.
Oh yeah. Guy gets to the very top, uses his spell action to get through some like what this rock barrier that they had. He would have to use strength, and his strength was not the good best. I'm like, he's like, Agent, there would be like I could see outside, right? I'm like, probably. I'm like, oh, I see what you did there. It was pretty good.
And your players are pretty receptive to you kind of homebrewing stuff like that in.
Oh yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. I've I at this instance where I think 3 out of 3 people weren't, or 3 out of 6 people weren't there. So I did a little like I didn't say quest, but they just kind of rounded get information. And because that they were there and they had, they spent the time with me, I gave them all each some magic items. One was some homebrew stuff. The other was something that was in game, but pretty cool. I thought they'd like it a lot. And then I forget what I did with the third player. I think I gave them some like information on someone they were looking for. Um, but I don't know, like they're okay with that. And I've had a player who's like, I want to do this, and I'm like, that's freaking crazy, but that sounds pretty cool. Let's see what we can do with it. And even, you know, what's it called? And they're just like, me and that individual were working together on how to make this list balanced. Does this make sense? I mean, I was giving them a crap ton of spells, so I had to make sure like that it was balanced. I'm giving you this whole like section in a spell list. You've got to sacrifice something. So I did hit points. So every time you cast this spell, you take X amount of D4 damage, and you can't heal that up until a long rest. So I did that for a while.
So you were basically giving them like access to additional spells.
Yes, they had it, but they still had to use their spell slots normally. They just had, yeah, like you said, access to it. It wasn't like free spells, but
Right, it was like
uh,
more spells known, kind of.
yes, exactly. There we go. But because they get those cool spells, they're going to take a hit to their life force.
That's kind of an
So.
interesting way to balance it too. Is then it's kind of a risk reward thing. Like, can I, you can take a little bit of damage here and there every once in a while, but that adds up over time. How
Hmm.
frequently do you want to be doing those other things?
Right. And even yeah, after like the first kind of go around, I had like if I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep that because like every time I homebrew something for a character, I'm like, listen, underline, this is homebrew. I don't know if I'm doing this right. We might change it as we go. Just FYI. I'll make some story reason, but like, this is all just testing.
And that
Um,
seems to be going pretty well for you so far. Then,
oh yeah, they understand. A lot of my players are understanding that the cool stuff that I make for them and also the cool stuff I make against them is all just either is work in progress. If there's something that's stupid broken, I will fix it on the spot. Like, okay, that's on me. I homebrewed this incorrectly. This is the stats now. And I'll find some sort of in-game reason. But I haven't had to do that for like any monsters or anything. I've homebrewed a couple monsters, but they've been fairly well received and easily beaten, or easy
probably,
enough.
probably usually more easily beaten than you would generally like.
Yeah, sometimes, but I find a way. Like I think this was like on the spot. Like brought out these skeletons on the road, and they started attacking, and I'm like, this encounter was going like getting slaughtered, and I'm like, okay, I think I want something different. And I found this other skeletal monster, and I'm like, oh, what if all these bones reformed and started like and grew? So I did that to just add a different flair, like a stage 2 to this monster, just on the fly because they were just blasting through these guys like they were paper. And they enjoyed that. A lot of them got like hit and the cart was damaged, but they were just like, "Oh, that would have could have gone bad." I'm like, "Okay, that's what I want. I want them to feel like, whoo, just got out of there."
That's a pretty neat idea as well, especially with skeletons. I know sometimes you think about, or I've seen advice to do combat sometimes in waves, so that
Mhm.
if you're beating on your players too much, you can kind of send less in the next wave, or send more in the next wave if they're taking it too easy. But that's a really neat way to reuse the original minions you had in kind of a cinematic way. It's still kind of the same idea. It's no different than sending in a bunch of goblins and then sending in like an ogre the second
Yeah.
time. But like thematically, it's a really cool set piece to have like the skeletons reform into like a bigger creature. Um, I have not seen anybody really talk about that before.
Yeah, I mean, there's been combats that have been like super easy until I feel like most combat for them was pretty decently easy for a long time, mainly for the fact that I was afraid to kill my players as a DM. And I think like I kept like, hey, you guys might die this counter, these guys. But every time I say it, they've been blowing it out of the park every time. And I think it's mainly like hesitation on my part of like throwing in the big spells first because like I felt like okay, I want these mediocre spells first and then the last hurrah. But usually the last hurrah has been counterspelled or they kill them before it. And I've been just rethinking how do I approach this team of individuals and how do I fight them. Um, it's been really good experience because I mean I was still learning. I'm like, what's the fear of or what's the point of playing this game if not to have some sort of fear of like I might die. If I know that my DM is like pulling the strings a little to make sure that I'm safe, then should I ever be scared of dying? Um, and one of my players told me like after a fight, I'm like, listen, you're doing good. I can tell when you pull back a little. I know, but we're playing this game, so let's just play this game. And I'm like, oh, okay, okay, I get that. And I really appreciate that. Um, I think a couple like landmarks, I stopped and asked the players, how do you feel the campaign's going? What do you want from it? And how am I doing? And what can I do different? Because I want to grow too. I'm having fun regardless because they're having fun, but how can we have more fun kind of thing?
Sure. And have you killed any of your player characters in this campaign yet?
Uh, Yes, it took me a while, but yes, I did. What's it called? It was the same player twice, and then a PC that they really loved. Um, but when he revived the first time, he had extra powers from something he did. Um, it was this essentially he consumed some creature, and it caused him to lose his mind, berserk, and he took what did I say? 2d4 exhaustion afterwards. He died because he rolled, I think, an 8, which is 6 points of exhaustion is immediate death. When they revived him, I'm like, okay, you have that same power, but you take the same damages. This will regen all your health. This will regen all your spell slots. This will give you damage resistance. This will give you all these stuff. But when you come out of it, you you will take that roll again, and you might die again. So like I gave him so many buffs, but a really like easy way to die.
Have any of them died permanently?
No, one of them we had, and this is kind of like the failing part of the DM. One of them had to be removed because of just not working with the team. And I had known it for a while, and I just didn't know how to approach it. And I tried to work with him. I tried to do everything for that person, and it just like and it wasn't just me. It was everybody, all my players, which I love my players. They assisted. They're like, listen, we trying to do this together. Let's try to stick together. Also, you're not totally a frontline character. Please stay out of this front line so we can protect you or you can sling your spells and all that. But that person wasn't listening, so they had to get him out of trouble every single time, and they were tired of it. One he kind of triggered one of our players from a because that player had a past trauma, and this guy just kind of like let it all out there just post game, and they were like, okay, and he left the game on his own, and then he wanted to come back, and I'm like, I can't have that happen again, and the best way for me to know that's not going to happen again is not to have you back, unfortunately, and that's a rough conversation,
Yeah.
and it's something that now that I've done it, I don't. I don't know if it's going to be easier, but it took like he was causing tension throughout the whole campaign. Unfortunately, there were some days he was good, but most days, unfortunately, was like hard to deal with and hard to like, he would go off on his own, and he's like, nothing would hurt him. During this instance where like he kind of pissed off the big bad evil slammed his head into the dinner table and broke his nose, and he goes, "No, my nose is not broken." And I'm like, "Okay, like that like we're okay, fine, whatever." I mean, one, you could have easily healed that up later, but and two, like, why are you like we're making this like you messed with him. There has to be consequences, but he wasn't seeing that. So he was like kind of talking back, and you can have some differences. Like, I'm not gonna rip off your arm or anything, but I just like made some flavored text to what happened. And he always wanted to be like the one in the lead, and he couldn't be made fun of, but he could make fun of everybody else. And that was
Sure.
another thing. Like,
Sure.
there's this thing I like to call splash damage. Um, I think there's a better word for it, or people use it differently. But like you and as player characters to player characters, you insulting somebody in game to the other player character has some effect to that individual. Like, they've put something into that character. It feels like you're insulting them because they've made it this character and it's personal to them. And you insulting them in a non like banterish way, consistently, like is going to affect someone. So like I had to cut that off and just
Yeah,
like listen. Go ahead.
I was to say, yeah. I mean, that's gonna wear on the whole group at that point if it continues for a long time.
Yeah, just that whole experience is just going to be soured by them. Um, so I mean, I think in that respect, I've been able to kind of come out, become better as a DM. Like, see that happen and address that issue. See the other issue, like when I had to kick him out, or when had to tell him to stay out, because like I would have had to have a long conversation with him and maybe probably kick him out. But he did it on his own. He wanted back. I'm like, no, I can't have that back.
Yeah, it's
Um,
probably good that he decided on his own. I think the conversation to remove somebody from the table would be more difficult than to just not allow them to come back in.
yes, and I think that now that it's happened, I'll be better for it though. Like, I understand what's going to happen. I understand how everyone's going to feel, and I knew the majority of the people were just like trying their best to make that individual a better player, but that he'd be good for 1 week, and then the next week he's just like, nope, not gonna have it. And so it was kind of a unfortunate long time coming, and you know I wanted it to work. I wanted this game to be for everybody, but there's just some point where like if you try to cater to everyone's needs, somebody's gonna not get their needs met eventually.
Right.
Like, you do more for this person, not to anybody else. It's gonna seem like favoritism, or it's gonna seem like you don't care about the rest of the party because you're just always trying to fix this person's like ideal of what the game is. And like, we're all trying to play this game together. It shouldn't be a one person trying to dictate everybody's ideology or everybody's kind of ideas to his own needs. This is a group thing. We have a discussion.
Right. The group's got to mesh, and at the end of the day, it could be that he just needed a different group with a different style, and it might be a perfect fit.
Yeah, and I think that's what he needed. And I told him like, look, you had fun in this game, right? There's going to be another game out there. You didn't expect to have fun here. There's going to be another game out there for you.
It definitely sounds like a very difficult situation to be in. I have been lucky that I haven't had to really deal with problem players. I also have a very small sample size of people that I've actually played with, so I'm sure
Yeah.
as that grows, the chances of having a problem player will also grow. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, just props to you for handling it the way you did, and I think working with the other players at the table to kind of make the right decision there.
They helped me as well. Like, it wasn't just me trying to fix everything. They like after a session, they had like a 3 hour conversation with the player, just try to like explain to him why these things were problematic or why things kind of annoyed other individuals. Like, they're literally taking their own time. Like that was like 3 hours is our usual session time, but they took their time in a whole session of trying to help fix it too. And I was just like we they tried, I tried, and so sometimes there's not a happy ending.
And that's something that I haven't really heard people talk about online either, is having the other players at the table kind of have a confrontation or just a discussion. Because I think a lot of times, at least when you read about the stories online,
Hmm.
it's usually kind of comes down to like it's the DM's responsibility somewhat to manage the table, I guess. And
Hmm.
I mean, like you said, it is a group thing, so the entire responsibility doesn't necessarily need to fall just on your shoulders if it's affecting everybody else at the table.
Yeah, no, like I think an important thing to take away is like this is your time that you're spending. If there's an issue, kind of talk about it because like this should be fun for everyone. And if there's something going on that can be easily changed, talk about it. Like have an open discussion amongst your players and DMs because I think that conversation, just because like he's running the game or she, it doesn't mean that you have to be complacent with everything. There could like, and also DMs, open up to your players, talk to them. I always have like a 15-minute conversation afterwards with these people. I mean, it's easy to just log out of a call and that's it, but like, have fun, get to know them, these people. I mean, for the most part, you already know them, but like, ask how the session went. Make sure everyone's on the right foot because we don't want this anger or upsetness to boil over for a week. Let's try to kind of talk about anything that happened that didn't go well right out at the bat.
Right. If you have a problem with something or you didn't like how a certain situation was handled or something, let's just kind of deal with it now and then look forward to next week instead of brooding over it.
Hmm. And I'm not saying like, hey, DM, you did this wrong. Like, hey, DM, like, there's this thing called a compliment sandwich. Like, hey, I like this, what you did. There's this part where I didn't quite, get it or understand it or kind of like, you know, didn't sit well with me. Can we talk about why you did that and kind of like why my reaction was like that, and be open with that thing, like a lot of, and then like, okay, and I also like you did this, smash it up. See what's happening, because people will respond better to that, or else sometimes it's hard to take like criticism as a DM.
Yeah, just in general, taking criticism can be difficult because it's easy to sometimes take things personally when
Oh yeah.
they maybe shouldn't be taken that way, but can be
Yeah,
easy to do.
exactly.
I think now we could probably go and kind of shift over to chat about your podcast a little bit if you want.
Sure. Yeah, so I run a Dungeons and Dragons slash kind of like, I want to say lifestyle or help or something like that kind of channel where we just talk about life and D&D, or D&D and life, we live around it. That's how we phrase it somewhere in some bio on some platform. um, but we brought on a bunch of different individuals. At first, it was just like artists who did D&D commissions, and then it grew into like people who kind of like were D&D adjacent, or and their games that they're like coming up with, or any board games. And recently I've been getting into talking to people who place things on the GM's Guild. They've been a real hoot. Like their creative spirit and talking to them kind of gets me amped up every time. It's super awesome. um, but yeah, and some of our DM friends and people who just started out and playing in Dungeons Dragons. So I wanted to get a versatile list of individuals, um, because I'm always excited to meet somebody new.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it's a pretty similar format to this, right? Where it's kind of just a casual conversation with the person that's on that week.
Yeah. So the dynamic here when we started was me as a veteran GM and newly trying to get into like grad school, which is the degrees part, and someone that has been to grad school and graduated who is just getting into DMing and Dungeons and Dragons. So we have this dichotomy of what's going on. Also, she's like very like what's it called? She doesn't know who's coming on usually, and I just like, all right, we're interviewing this. We're like, okay, I'll Google it when we get there. And she has this like other perspective that always is helps me out. One with like any awkward pauses or just like opening up and just a new line of ideas that I hadn't been thinking about because I was just so set on one. She helps me diversify. It's me and Alex who run this podcast together. But yeah, I think if you go check it out, I think my one of my favorite episodes is going to be I think episode 11 with Carlos Luna. He runs I think content creation for Roll20, which is pretty cool. And then Lee, which I want to say is like 27 or 36. Oof. Anyways, um, they create a content for or like commission work, and it's a pretty penny, but it's worth it. I freaking love their art. Um, so, and we talked about identity and like what it's like to kind of like try to figure out who you are and how to approach a subject matter that you wouldn't be comfortable in real life to talk about, but trying it out in game in a pseudo sense to like test out the waters and see how it works and be a witness to those kind of opportunities. So those two episodes highly recommend. But yeah, just a whole lot of hoot and hollers. Just we go off the rails like real bad, like ridiculously bad. We just go off the rails, especially when we have people on a second time, like that facade of like professionalism and this is what I expect as a podcast out the window the second time we have them on because we get very friendly with them real quick and we just talk about the craziest, dumbest shite that's been there. Sorry,
Oh no, you're
delete
good.
or cut that out.
Um,
um,
no, that's awesome. Just the that's just part of the fun, right? I mean, it's your podcast. You can make it to be however crazy or serious that you want it to be. So you might as well have fun with it, right?
oh yeah, um, yeah, of course. Can't wait to keep interviewing people. So, and I was glad to be on the other end for the first time. So, pretty cool. I felt like a little ranty there. So, but I
No,
think that's what I'm supposed to as the guest. I don't know. It just foreign to me.
yes. As the guest, I've had a lot of people say that, like, "Oh, I just feel like I was rambling in this section," but you're the one being interviewed, so you can ramble as long as you want. If I don't have to say like anything the whole interview, that's perfect. So, but yeah, that
Awesome.
is probably a little different for you being on the receiving end instead of the giving end of the interview.
Exactly. We're on most podcasting platforms. We got a Instagram, D and Degrees or D and Degree Pod, and then a TikTok. Um, kind of slowed down on that one, but we're all over social media. You can look us up. Soon, hopefully, once I finish Curse Strahd, I'll be streaming too, and that is on Dungeons and then the letter N Degrees. So that's gonna be fun.
And when you'll be streaming that, is that going to be like on YouTube or Twitch?
Oh, it's gonna be on Twitch. Sorry. Oof. Yes, it'll be on Twitch. I'm slowly getting some music and some stuff that I can like stream as and not be afraid of like getting like TOS or anything
Oh yeah,
together.
yep. Yeah, it can be difficult to know like what's acceptable to use in terms of just other media on
Oh,
stream.
yeah. Yeah. Luckily, I have some people that I've interviewed that know people who kind of create music. And I've seen some that are on, TikTok as well. Like I'm trying to figure out what's going to be the most cost-effective method, and also what's going to be fun and what kind of styles are going to be in. But yeah, I've been looking around.
Well, I'm gonna have to keep an eye on what you find because that might be helpful over here as well.
Oh yeah. Hey, no, just let me know. We go live on Sundays at 10 a.m. That's when every episode should be out, unless I go get behind, which life happens, and I try my best, but some things I just can't foresee.
Yeah, I totally get that, and I have been extremely behind because of work and some other things. So I typically do mine on Friday mornings. Um,
Hmm.
and like I didn't have any this week until yesterday, and you are now like the third interview that I've done this week. So I'm trying to get back ahead
Yeah.
of my schedule.
No, I completely understand. I had like something happened with my co-host, so we had to be silent for like 2 months. So I'm like, okay, I have all these backups. I'll be good for a little bit, but not 2 months worth of stuff. So it's been good. I'm glad, stay ahead, and then you won't fear being behind. Easier said than done, though,
Yes,
for sure.
yes, very much so. It's been awesome talking to you. I really enjoyed our conversation tonight.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It was an enjoyable thing to just blabber on without many consequences, or my co-host saying, "Adrian, hold up," reeling me back in.
Um, yeah, that's awesome. So I guess I can probably stop recording now. But um, so like off the episode, um, do you think that your co-host would be interested in also doing an interview with me sometime?
Maybe I'll have to see what she's available. But usually she's pretty good about that. I'll ask her.
Because I think it would be fun to have had both of you guys on the show. Um,
Yeah, and then we're gonna have to have you on the show.
that would be awesome as well. I am completely willing to come on and have my seat rolled reversed for the first time.
Exactly.
Um, how do you tend to schedule just interviews and stuff?
Oh, a cold call. A cold called a bunch of people. Some people will not respond. Some people will. Some say they don't have time. It just depends. Um, that's what I've been doing. Like when I said that I talked to the artist, oh my God, my heart freaking a pitter pattering. Like I was so nervous. Literally, I in this Word doc, I'm like, okay, um, it's messages I'm afraid to fail at. Okay, that's cool. I'm not gonna put that in, but that's how I feel. So and I wrote them a message and I reread it and I changed it up and I have this format I have usually of how I send this out and I make sure that there's something personal like in the middle of there saying like this isn't just all copy paste and your name is switched. Like I know who you are and I want you to come in. But here's the niceties at the beginning, here's the niceties at the end. But look, this is why I want you on. This is just me being real. Um, and I just asked, and I was afraid for the longest time. And slowly but surely, I started getting more people, more people, more people. And usually, the best way I've seen to get like Carlos Luna, who's the creator of Roll20, and Mike Trapp, who was a content or writer for College Humor, to get on was just their own personal websites. It was the easiest way to
Oh,
get to them.
sure.
I
Yeah.
tried to get Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Oh, yep.
Haven't heard back, but I bet his website was just down forever, and I finally got back up. But he's got a wedding to plan for. He's got a shit ton of things to do. So I've been like, send that message out there. Come back in a year or two. You've got many of people to interview. It's going to be fine. You'll have content to create. It's going to be fine.
Right. Yeah, and I'm like right now I'm working through I just posted on Reddit just to get like anybody that runs a game
Hmm.
just let me know and maybe I'll get some people and I have like 100 and probably 50 people now on my list.
Shit.
Um none of them are like really like high powered individuals, I would say, like
Hmm.
like creator of Roll20 or anything like that. So but that's really cool to see that you guys have been able to get a hold of some of those people and get them on,
Yeah.
because those will be fun for me as well, to eventually shoot for. um,
Yeah. I mean you have your content, whenever you can, you do it. Like today I was supposed to have a writer up, but he said he had an appointment, so I got to reschedule it for another time next week. But it's it's just whatever. I mean, whatever your style is and whatever you feel comfortable with.
yeah, and I'm sure as you've gotten more episodes out, that probably helps your case too to have some of the bigger people on, right? Because it's more reach on your end. So
Yeah, I mean, like so the one person that did finally tell me no was who's that Twitch streamer? Gosh, Arcadium, something like that. he responded, and then told me to give a look, but he never like. And after a month of silence, I asked him. He's like, I just don't have the time. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like that was the first no I had, and that was after what? Like we had 30 episodes, but they need a reason to come on. Can they, put on a reach for other individuals? Some people are like that, and then some people are just like, hey, I see you as a small creator. I'm down to talk to you, and stuff like that. It just really depends.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I said, I haven't really reached out to any big people yet. So, but it'll be interesting to try and do that in the future.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to have you on as kind of another small creator too, to
Oh yeah.
kind of go back and forth, and hopefully we can help
We're
each other out.
small.
What?
It was like, oh yeah, we're small, super small. Like, I know we're small, so like, I get it. Like, I don't know. I don't know if he'll ever like. No, well, I really know when I'm getting better and better. But like, I look at the anchor views and it's like stuck at one number. I'm like, that's fine. You're having fun with this. Do whatever.
Yep. I started this. I mean, it would be really cool to like make money from it and do it as like a job or a career or
Yeah.
something, but like I got a long ways to go before that ever happens. So my intentions with starting it was like, I don't have a lot of people in my circle that I really get to just sit and nerd out about D&D and RPGs and stuff. So I'm just going to go find the people on the internet who are in that circle, and then I'm going to make my own circle and just get to talk to a new person every week about stuff that I enjoy. So I it'd be cool if I could get paid from it, but that's also not really the main focus either. As long as it's sustainable on my end, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. No,
But
I understand that. Yeah.
cool. Well, I can let you get back to the rest of your night, but for sure it was a lot of fun having you on. Talk to your co-host and just see if she would be interested in coming on sometime. Doesn't have to be soon if she's busy or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll let you know.
and then whenever you have a slot and you want to have me on, I just ping me on Discord probably, and I'll be more than happy to schedule some time and go from there.
Gotcha. It might be the end of July. We'll see. I have I'm on call, which means I might have to be ready for 24 hours for 5 days. It's tiring. And so I don't do any recordings then because I don't want to end a conversation midway through.
Yeah,
But I'll be we usually record on Wednesdays, so maybe I'll reach out on the 28th or before the 28th and we'll see what happens.
yeah, that's actually perfect because like this weekend we got a house sit for my parents, and then the next weekend my wife and I are on a vacation. So getting into that like the last 2 weeks of July, I'm actually freeing up as well. So that's actually perfect.
All right.
Um,
Well, I'll confirm that information when we get closer to it to make sure my co-host will be good as well.
cool. And then just for your information, at
Hmm.
least for where I've got your interview at, I try to release them in order. So yours would then probably release on July 16th. Um, so that's
Fridays.
like
Okay,
two
2 Fridays.
two-ish weeks from now.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Cool.
yeah, so but oh, and I can ping you before it goes live too. Um,
Sounds golden.
but yeah, that it's been awesome. Great having you on, and I look forward to talking to you and your co-host again soon.
All right. No problem. You have a wonderful night. Thank you for having me on.
Yes,
Really appreciate it.
you bet. You too. Thanks.
Uh,